because his blood flowed pure red and white, pure as a St. George's cross, so he had no more need of the emblem. He was a true Englishman. It was marvellous.
That's just so wrong on so many levels.
What would you give this, Nathaniel?
I'm not just sure I can continue the broadcast. It's a disgusting piece of work, which I'll give it 2 out of 10.
2 out of 10? Well, I'm going to go to the opposite end of the spectrum. It's 10 out of 10.
Right, people, it's time for the rebranded slot. What used to be current affairs is now any other business. And this week we're going to be discussing the merits, the side effects and the cultural clout of the substance we call alcohol. Love it or hate it, folks, this stuff has been around since 10,000 years BC, and it's been used for a number of reasons, which include religious and medicinal, as well as the obvious social lubricant that it exists as today. Where are you with the whole alcohol thing, Richard?
It's lovely.
Well, I think we've gathered that on a few of the broadcasts that you've been doing on our podcast. You've been somewhat worse for the wear.
It's absolutely lovely, Nathaniel. I think it's great. I love it.
What about the somewhat okay? It's very antiquated, but Christian defy the demon drink. Does that not resonate at all?
I think as long as it's done in moderation, there's absolutely no problem at all. Now, I mean, obviously you can get it in many different varieties, which just seems to further evidence of its popularity. It's increasing popularity, it would seem, as well.
Oh yes.
But no, I've got no particular objection to alcohol. In fact, I've got no objection at all. Why am I qualifying it? I've got no objection at all. I think it's marvellous stuff.
So what about the whole binge drinking infestation that seems to be infesting these shores at the moment?
Well, I do think that may be being blown a little bit out of proportion.
I hate it when you're logical.
I'm sorry, but clearly there are people that abuse alcohol, that drink too much too quickly, and then their bodies just can't cope. But I think they're not quite as prevalent as we might believe. And let's be frank here. The people that tend to be doing that are quite young, and when we're young, our bodies can cope with all sorts.
Right.
So no, I think that is fear mongering, trying to get people terrified so they stay in their own homes. No.
I'm trying to bait you a little bit there. I completely agree with you, Richard.
Do you?
That seems absolutely logical and well thought out.
Thank you.
And I completely agree. You've already used the word yourself, moderation, Richard.
Absolutely.
The key with alcohol.
Yeah.
There are drugs that are more interesting and better for you than alcohol, namely cannabis. But like any drug or stimulant, treat it with respect, and its effects are basically beneficial.
Oh, you've stepped over the line there a little bit, Nathaniel. I've got no problem with alcohol, but I'll have no truck with cannabis or its ilk. But certainly I agree with the message of moderation. No more than 3 bottles of wine a day, I would suggest. No more than 8 cans of strong lager per day. And certainly no more than a bottle of whiskey. If you stick to those numbers, I think you'll be okay.
Well, they just seem a little bit excessive. That's certainly a little more than what most people would consider a reasonable quantity per day. If I can just drag you back to the cannabis thing for a moment. You say you can't see my rationale there. Well, let me try and explain it. If you've got absolutely mashed off your face on cannabis, so stoned and so high that you forget what your name is, you can wake up in the morning as fresh as a daisy. You drink a bottle of whiskey and get yourself completely and utterly smashed that way, you see what the following effect is the next morning.
Oh, you'd have a savage headache, wouldn't you?
I think you'd have more than a savage headache. It really. My point being that the potency of alcohol is shocking. Yes, if you treat it with respect, it's absolutely fine. But once you get into the realms of overindulgence, then it's absolutely destructive.
Now, you said that you thought my numbers were a little bit wide of the mark.
A little bit wide of the mark.
Now, did you know that when the chief medical officer was called upon by the government to come up with a daily recommended amount, they literally pulled it out of their asses.
What do you mean?
They made the number up.
Right. And what was that number? Or what was the quote?
Well, isn't it? I can't. You've got me there off the top of my head. Isn't it 21 units per week for men and 15 units per week for women?
Well, I think you're right, but
they made the numbers up.
And so I think it's ambiguous by design, because surely, why use the term unit? Isn't that a real odd term of expression? Why not just condense it into nuts and bolts language that people understand? You can have 10 glasses of wine a week, 12 pints a week. People understand that. They don't understand fucking units.
But a bottle of wine can taste virtually identical, and it could be 8% by volume, or it could be 14% by volume.
Yes.
So if you said you can have 5 glasses of wine, if you're drinking a stronger one, you're drinking, twice as much alcohol virtually.
You'd have to average it out, Richard. Yes, you're right. Obviously, there are still differences, like you say, within beers, within wines and ciders and so on. You're right.
So the units measurement is an attempt to standardise, isn't it? Because if you look on the side of a can of beer, it will tell you the number of units that can of beer equates to.
Yeah, but the authorities know that people don't pay any attention to that.
Well, that's true.
It's not exactly. It's not like a cigarette packet where it's obviously in your face. This is what it's going to do to you.
Yes.
That information is basically hidden. It's stuck somewhere peculiarly on the side of a can, knowing full well that people aren't going to give it an iota of their attention. Go on.
Go on.
And I'll come back to our point that the term units is deliberately ambiguous to not discourage people from drinking, bizarrely enough.
In America, the recommended amount is slightly lower than in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
In Australia, it's double.
Right.
Which again kind of paints the whole thing as a nonsense, doesn't it?
It does. It absolutely does. Yes. So it'd be far more healthier and efficient, would it not, just to say you cannot drink if you're driving. You can't have any.
At all.
At all.
Zero tolerance.
That would be the. I wouldn't necessarily agree with it, but it'd be a simpler and a far more enforceable law to bring about.
Mm. But what about then people who had some medication, had a tiny amount of alcohol in? If they were pulled over, would they be prosecuted?
Well, obviously you don't get prosecuted on the spot, do you? There's a process, there's a trial of some sort, and obviously there are going to be extenuating circumstances on occasion, and that would just be one of those. Perhaps carry your prescription in your glove compartment or something.
Oh, I see. Yeah, again, I think that it's something of a myth, the drink driving. I think it's a fallacy. I certainly drive better when I've had a few, Nathaniel. I don't know about you.
Well, this is where there's a haziness about it, because I'm with you in so much that I don't think, as long as you're not absolutely completely hammered, if you go out to have 2 or 3 pints, I don't think it actually affects your standard of driving.
Mm.
But what it does do is, unfortunately, with the standard of driving, which is another issue, perhaps we can talk about that another week, the standard of driving in this country is on the decline, and you have to drive for other people. You have to be able to react to certain situations, and obviously reaction times are dulled under the influence, and so that's why these laws are there.
Let's talk about a scenario.
Yes.
It's 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
I've had 6 pints of beer.
Yes.
I don't know, Stella or some lager, some cider or other.
Okay.
So, quite strong.
Yeah.
Should I drive?
Oh man, that's a real kind of focusing question. My instinct is to say no, Richard, but I'm basing it on my own judgment, because if I had 6 pints of Stella, I'd probably die. A man who can take the rail more hardily, I have to say perhaps. But
you know, I can walk straight as a die. I can speak the alphabet backwards without a pause. I'm lucid. My speech is clear. To all intents and purposes, unless you sat there with me for the previous 4 hours, you'd never even known I'd had a beer. Should I drive?
What if a lorry pulls out of a side road on you, Richard, and you have to stop just to save your own life?
Are you suggesting that I may stop? I may hit the brake later?
Yes, I'm suggesting exactly that. Yes.
Right. I mean, if that's the case, then I shouldn't be driving, should I?
No. And I guess that's the point. It doesn't affect your actual standard of driving, as in like road awareness or skills on the road, but it's the reaction time when other idiots pull out on you, do silly things that you have to react to.
It's pure reflexes you're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. You've condensed it down to purely that, and that's exactly what it is.
You know, I used to think that I was an alcoholic,
Right.
Nathaniel, until I realised that it doesn't actually exist.
An alcoholic doesn't exist?
No.
What sorry, you mean the term doesn't exist, or the actual reality?
The condition.
Oh, the condition alcoholism is a myth?
It's a fallacy.
Right, okay.
It's an excuse.
I'm looking forward to this. Go on.
People that enjoy drinking more than they enjoy going to work, they get labelled as an alcoholic, and it gives them the excuse to continue that lifestyle.
It's a really interesting point of view, Richard. Obviously, it's one I completely disagree with. Alcoholism is a very simple concept to understand. If you wake up in the morning needing a drink, you have an issue.
But I wake up in the morning normally needing a wee. Does that mean I have? Am I a wee-aholic?
You're a piss pot.
Listen, look, alcohol doesn't kill people. People kill people.
No, alcohol kills people, Richard. It's a poison.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
People kill people. Alcohol's their weapon of choice.
Go and do your medical research and come back to me. We can have a genuine discussion. Alcohol is a poisonous drug that, as I've already alluded to, is destructive to the body.
I see it as little more than a cleansing of the gene pool. The working classes are gradually being exterminated.
I don't know. I'm not sure that argument holds up. I know the tops like their champagne and their port and things. I know that can get it down the necks, Richard.
It's a purer form of alcohol, though, isn't it?
It's purer.
It is. Yeah, yes. In the cheap drinks, they use ethanol, which is almost it's almost the industrial alcohol that's used to clean and sterilise things.
No, that's not quite right, Richard. That you'll find that's methanol.
Methanol.
Yes. Not ethanol is the safest one.
So it's methanol in the cheaper drinks.
No, methanol doesn't exist in any alcoholic drinks, or shouldn't.
I think you'll find, if you look on the side of